Let's go to our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, that is on Islamophobia. 15th of March has been declared as the day of Islamophobia. It's very important. This, of course, day has been decided and declared by the OIC. And it's important this day where far-right groups have taken advantage of the whole global scenario and have waged a war against the Muslims. More in the following report.
Islamophobia increased in the West after 9/11, and unfortunately it has gained pace in recent years. As former US President Donald Trump entered the politics, he openly expressed his myopic views on Islam and Muslims. It was the beginning of Trumpism, which influenced the entire world. Several groups in Europe drew inspiration from this Trumpism, and Islam and Muslims became their favorite targets. They blame Muslim immigrants for their failings. Where previously they were labeled as extremist groups, these very groups are now entering corridors of power, becoming mainstream. In this backdrop, OIC's decision to observe the International Day to combat Islamophobia with solid strategies is a welcome initiative which can help in fighting Islamophobia. Islamophobia takes many forms, including negative profiling, mob attacks, and harassment of women wearing hijab. Several countries have slipped down the line where they openly adopt policies which are meant to target Muslims. This includes banning burqa, shutting down Islamic schools, and increasing vetting of Muslims. So much so, countries like Switzerland recently banned the burqa and niqab, despite the fact that very few people wear them. India is an extreme example where the so-called secular state under Narendra Modi has adopted Islamophobia as a central plank of its state policy, passing laws that discriminate against Muslims while looking away when acts of violence target the community. Muslims have been lynched, attacked, and unfairly jailed in India in recent years. Indian states are passing laws which are slowly but surely squeezing space for Muslims. The OIC should take a strong stance that discrimination against Muslims will not be tolerated, and that those who indulge in hate crimes must face the law. The misguided acts of few must not allow all Muslims to be painted with the same brush. Moreover, the civil rights of Muslims everywhere must be ensured, and they must be allowed to practice their faith freely.
Now, of course, 15th of March was designated as the day to combat Islamophobia. To talk more about the importance to combat what we know as Islamophobia, we've been joined by Zafar Iqbal Saab. He's a media scholar. Zafar Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Zafar Saab, Islamophobia is something that our Prime Minister has been talking on and on again at different fora, whether it be the United Nations General Assembly or other fora. Or now the OIC has also now designated the 15th of March as that day to combat Islamophobia. How much do you see Islamophobia integrating and penetrating the segments of societies across the globe?
I think this is now gonna be you can say, a kind of pandemic in the entire world against Muslims and Islam. It has become a big problem, and we need to in fact realize this problem. And the step that the government of Pakistan has taken, lately you see Prime Minister of Pakistan has consistently talking about Islamophobia. The first ever General Assembly of the United Nations that he addressed, he's talking about Islamophobia.
Exactly, one of the 4 topics he talked about.
Yeah, exactly, one of the 4 topics is Islamophobia. And second time he again talked about Islamophobia, and at that time he in fact demanded this thing to the United Nations that Islamophobia Day should be celebrated. And now the third step that we see that OIC is also recognizing it, of course on the demand of Pakistan that Islamophobia Day should be celebrated. This is, in fact, you can say the realization about that this has become a big anathema for the world, and especially the Muslims living in the Western world.
Does the West realize that, Zafar Saab? Does the West realize that what they are slowly and steadily thinking about the Muslim community, about Islam, is in fact this hatred against the Muslim community that we call Islamophobia? Do they realize that fact?
They do realize, but you see that realization is among those who are the saner voices in the Western world. But the thing is that there are people, those who in fact pouring a lot of funding to create that kind of Islamophobic feelings in their media, in the people, and of course in their political elites as well. So unfortunately, we are not working on them, and we are unable to even identify them, that who they are and what kind of funding is being poured into. I was in fact lately demanding this thing that not only day should be celebrated to create an awareness of Islamophobia, rather we should also propose this thing to the international fora, that the money that is being poured by the hate mongers to create this kind of Islamophobic discourses in the West, that has to be checked like FATF. I mean, FATF is being, you see, stringent protocols are there for Pakistan, so that no money should be, you see, spilled to extremism and kind of fundamentalism. But we have to look at it this, that there have been, you see, a lot many organizations and they are putting a lot of
Far-right
money.
organizations.
Far-right organizations. And there you see putting a lot of money into this kind of business. Islamophobia in the West has become a very, very profitable business. It has now become an industry. So for that, of course, we need to look at it that who are the people, those who are getting
Zafar
benefit out of
Saab,
that.
you talk of Islamophobia in the West. Let's talk of Islamophobia in our very region, across the border in India, how the BJP government is also fanning these fires of Islamophobia amongst their own communities.
Yeah, this is, you see, the far right is there in India in power. So that's why they are promoting this kind of slogans. And you see who they are. They are the people, those who since long been in fact doing things like that against Muslims. And what they are doing right now, I mean, in the South Asia, I call that India is becoming the epicenter of Islamophobia. Lately, in Corona times, you see what happened. They were in fact declaring that Corona jihad is now on the rise in India because you see a Tablighi Jamaat that went over and some of them were suffering from Corona, and they, of course, that's of course pandemic, so that spread. So they were saying that this is a kind of thing which is not, you see, inadvertently they were doing, rather this is kind of conscious effort on part of the Muslims to in fact this kind of spread of Corona through Tablighi Jamaat. So in fact we need to check it, and this is, you see, not the only thing that they're doing. You see, in the last couple of months' time, you can see and you can observe it that the names that was, in fact, you see, Mughaliya regime's names of the airports and the museums and the places and the roads that are being changed with the Hindu names. So Hindutva ideology, in fact, is an ideology of extremism.
And it is
that
also,
in fact,
it is
on the rise.
also an ideology that promotes Islamophobia.
That promote Islamophobia, and they are on the forefront of doing this kind of thing. You see, I think in India, I mean, if you have to look at it from the Indian perspective only, then Hindutva and the ideology is in fact something that fans Islamophobia over there, and I mean, they are the superior ones. They call themselves superior, it means that others are becoming inferior.
All right, let's talk about the role of the OIC in order to curb this menace that is Islamophobia, whether it be the day that has been recognized as the 15th of March or whether it be the meeting in New York on 17th of March. How important is this committee of Islamic nations also to get together and to be as one against this menace?
Actually, I'm a little, you can say this is a little dismaying for me to learn that Islamophobia is a very important thing that has to be addressed by international fora. I mean, the Muslim international fora like OIC, but they, of course, are paying somehow a lip service to the things which are extremely worse in the West. For instance, I do not see that there are think tanks that are to understand that what Islamophobia is, because Islamophobia is a complex bundle of different kind of epistemes. We need to understand it before we address it. For instance, in the United States, there is Islamophobia in strict securitized perspective. You securitize Muslims and you create justification for the actions against them. While in the West, Islamophobia is in a different formula, but this is maybe a prejudice, is some kind of, you see, religious racism. So unless we understand that, we won't be able to, in fact, tackle the problem. Now, who has this responsibility to create those kind of chairs, the think tanks, where we need to understand Islamophobia and then develop those kind of prognostics, which is, in fact, the primary responsibility of such organization. But you see, what OIC is doing, annually they are trying to produce a Islamophobia observatory report, and that's it. And the kind of, you see, action they have just taken to launch a day, 15th of March, as Islamophobia Day. This is, in fact, you see, constant insistence of Pakistan on this issue.
Okay, all right. At the same time, let's talk about going beyond that. We have the Rohingya issue, we have what happened in Christchurch, and of course, Jacinda Ardern so adamantly tackled this issue in a very dignified manner and a very professional manner. Isn't this a responsibility of other important countries in the West also to tackle Islamophobia? The way, for example, I mean, I wouldn't cite exactly as Christchurch, because Christchurch, a lot of people laid down their lives, but in other parts of the world, just to tackle this growing hatred against Muslims, isn't it the need of the hour for important countries such as the European Union, such as the United States, such as the United Kingdom, to also look into it?
Actually, they are somehow doing on that, but the question is that who should supposed to push them to do something like that? You see, Islamophobia is a Western concept, because the West have become the volcanic because of kind of problems that they are facing over there in terms of, you see, rising Islamophobic tendencies over there. They have to, of course, tackle it, but the question is that who have to make them realize about that? Of course, their societies have become very precarious in terms of law and order because of Islamophobic tendencies. But the question is that at the same time, right-wing also is on the rise there. And for political reasons, there are some of the people, those who try to mitigate the effects of Islamophobia in their country, but some others would like to have, you see, flare it up. who is Pamela Galler, who is Geert Wilder. You see, he was opposition leader in his assembly, and he was saying that there should be a cartoons competition in Netherlands. So why he is not in fact going to toe the line that has been given by some of the scholars within that country. So there are, you see, right-wing people, those who never like to have Muslims in their country, they would never like to have Islam in their regions. So this kind of, you see, this is a historic
why are
tendencies
they
here.
afraid of Islam? This is a very interesting question that a lot of people have asked me, and I'm asking the same to you.
Actually, you see, this is not something that that could be very easily answered in a very small, in a very short span of time. Reason being that the Islamophobia is a historic phenomenon. It has been there since the time Islam took birth. You see, who was creating hate material when Islam took birth? John of Damascus. Then after 13th century, Peter the Venerable. The hate material is still there. And that hate music consistently being passed on to the modern literature. And that is becoming the foundations or basis of the arguments that the new political leadership is in fact creating upon them. So we have to in fact challenge it to be able to reduce those kind of things coming up in future. But who would think about that? Who would challenge those material which is in fact saying anything bad about Muslims, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Quran? So this is in fact a thing that we need to in fact understand. All polemics are becoming, you see, seminal things for the new literature which is in fact produced. I mean, Satanic verses, on what grounds Satanic verses was created? Who was writing, I mean, William Moore? What was in fact the basis of his arguments that he was trying to build up? So until and unless we challenge those things in the Western societies, the Western literature, I don't think we will stop producing this kind of hatred in them.
That's a very important point. We need to challenge all that has been emanating from the West in forms of literature, in form of dialogue, in form of different kinds of politicians or the political philosophy, or even here across the border in India, the way their philosophy of RSS and Hindutva and this Hindu ideology that has to be counted in a very proper and a dignified manner, whether it be through dialogue process, whether it be through different meetings, whether it be through different other processes. It's time for the whole Muslim world to unite as one and to counter this very important menace that is Islamophobia. Thank you very much, Zafar Iqbal Sahab, to have joined us and to have given us a very important perspective on this very, very important issue that is plaguing the entire Muslim Ummah as we speak. Thank you, sir.